Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Life in Flux podcast. What is up, everybody? My name is Ron Segal, and this is the Life in Flux podcast, where I share a little bit about how I run my business, how I run my life, how I try to adjust in this rapidly changing world. And today I want to talk about something that I'm dealing with recently, which is how to become a better manager. Can you become a better manager? And I want to start with a story. It was probably like 10 years ago, before I even started Flux Academy. I actually interviewed, so Fiverr were hiring head of design. And I interviewed for that position. And I think I interviewed with, I don't remember if it was one of the co-founders or one of the like top leadership there. And the guy asked me like about my management experience. And I was like, yeah, I managed other people because I was coming basically from freelance. And I did manage other people when I collaborated with them. And so I try to present it as if I have some management experience. And he basically asked me, how many people did you fire? And I was like, I didn't really fire people. And he was like, well, you have to have a lot of, I don't know if he said like holes in your belt, but he basically tried to say something like, you really need to gain experience by doing this a lot of times in order to say that you have an experience. I think that was kind of like his bottom line, and where he basically tried to tell me, hey, you don't have enough experience. And I don't remember if I was resentful for that comment, or eventually, of course, I'm happy I didn't take that position. But I thought, well, I don't know if that's true. But later I did start Flux Academy, and then I was hiring people, and first time I did have a management experience. And I remember, when I started Flux Academy, and I was very ambitious, I wanted it to be a big company. So I put it as a goal for myself to be a good manager. And I was reading a lot of books about management, and I was working with a business coach to mostly on becoming a good manager. And I always struggled. I struggled with hiring. I didn't enjoy the hiring process. I found it really difficult. I felt like I could never find the person that I'm looking for. And at the end of the day, maybe I have to kind of settle for something that's not perfect. And then when I was hiring just to get over with the hiring process, just because I hated it so much. I wanted to get over. So if this person wants to work for me, great, let's hire them. And then when I had team members, I always struggled with keeping them accountable. Meaning I wanted them to do something, or achieve some kind of a goal. And if we didn't hit this goal, I always made up excuses for them. They didn't have to make up the excuses for themselves. I made the excuses for them. Well, you can't blame him for this because that and that and that other things happened and it was out of their control. And so I always, in a way, made up excuses. And I found it very, very difficult to hold people accountable. And I think that at some point, a few years into running Flux Academy, I started telling myself the story of, you know what, maybe management is not for you. Maybe you're a creator, you enjoy building stuff and creating stuff and designing stuff. You're not into managing other people, and this is just not for you. And so there was a period where I tried to completely get rid of it. I said, okay, let's bring a COO to the company, a person who's going to be actually managing the people. I'll be just a CEO doing the visionary and fun stuff, and he'll be taking care of all of the management stuff. And that didn't work out, not because it's impossible. I think it is possible, but I think it was maybe too early, and the company was still too small for me to completely delegate everything and not do anything. So that was another failure. But I think that I came out of it with telling myself the story of, hey, everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. My strengths, I have a lot of strengths. I don't deny this, but it's probably not with dealing with people. I'm impatient. I'm not, I'm not, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a complete asshole, but like I don't maybe really care about their problems. I don't have the patience. I know some people want to, become friends with their team members and go out with them and, share stories and kind of like become best friends or family. For me, I never had that sense of feeling. It's, these are people who we work together. Great. I have my life. They have their life. So I was always kind of a little bit disconnected. And I felt like maybe that's just not for me. I'm not a people's person. I like to work alone on my own. I like to create stuff. So I basically told myself, or I think I boxed myself in that story of I'm not a good manager and I can try to fight it. And I've been fighting it for years, trying to learn how to become a manager. But it's just, there's this advice or personal growth advice that it's best if you focus on your strengths, whether or instead of trying to fix your weaknesses. And so my sense was it's best if I don't try to become the best manager possible. I just focus on my strengths and do what I'm good at. I'm going to create content. I'm going to create courses. I'm going to create product, and that's really where my strength is. Obviously, I was still having a team, like a small team, so I did manage people, and but I always kept that story. At least for the last, I think 3-4 years, I had that story of I don't want to manage people. I'm not a good manager. I'm going to manage Flux with the smallest team possible. And there's no doubt that this story and this situation held the company small because, again, we didn't have enough people to do everything that we wanted to do. We were limited. And the other thing about that is that because we were a small team, because eventually a lot of the responsibility was still on me, that kind of led me to, I guess, burnout in some situation because a lot of the responsibility was still on me and that was tiring, in the long run. But that was kind of like the story that I was telling myself for years. And I always had that fantasy of now with AI, maybe you don't even need team members anymore, right? You can just have AIs working 24 hours for you, and I don't have to deal with all of the complexities of, managing people and dealing with, I don't know, their problems and trying to be. I wouldn't say I'm autistic in the sense of sometimes it's difficult for me to read their emotional situation, or if we're from different cultures, then I'm Israeli and very direct, and I say things to the face, and people from different cultures might not take this very well. And so I had for a little while the fantasy of, okay, soon with AI, you don't have to manage other people. And I think, at least on Twitter where I live, there is this narrative of the the 1 million person company, and now it's going to be a $1 billion company because now one person with a lot of AI can build like a huge company. And I'm also following a bunch of people who actually did this, right? They've built products. I think Levels.io is one of the Peter Levels is one of the like the top examples of a person who's managing multiple products on his own. He's got no employees. He's just him, and he's making a bunch of money. And it, from the outside, it might sometimes look like, a fantasy of like, oh, this is the best. This is the ideal situation for me, for somebody who is a creator who, likes to work on his own. That's the ideal situation. So I think I lived in this fantasy for quite a while. And the interesting thing is that it was just, when I had this, I don't know if to say breakdown, kind of like at the end of last year, where I wasn't sure what I'm going to do with my company. And eventually I ended up bringing a partner and this partner, Urush, he runs an agency with 60 people. So he is like the complete opposite from me, meaning he is a good manager. He understands how to delegate to people, and he made it work for him. And he basically came to me and at the end of the day sold me on this idea, or not sold me on this idea, but managed to change my mind that, look, what are you going to do? Let's say, you leave Flux and you open up a new business and you vibe code an app or whatever it is that you want to do, and then you succeed. What do you think? You think you're not going to need other people to delegate the work to? Of course you will, because you will be at the same situation where you are with Flux, where you have something that is working. You do not want to do everything yourself, and you need other people to help you. Otherwise, you have to do the things yourself. And about the AI fantasy, I think I realized this as well when I was trying to vibe code an educational app, and I shared this, I think, in a previous episode. I vibe coded an app, and then I put it out there, and I even start selling a little bit, and then I crashed the whole code base. And the stress that I got from, oh my God, now it's not working. I have to figure it out. I don't know what's going on, made me realize that at the end of the day, maybe you can do a lot with AI and whatever, but at the end of the day, the reason that you have people working with you is not necessarily that they do the work. It's basically who is responsible. And I think a lot of people miss that about AI. Yeah, AI can do the work sometimes, but the person who operates it is the person who is responsible. If I'm a single person running a company, even if I got like 1,000 agents working for me, when one of them fails or breaks down something, who is responsible? If I'm alone, the responsibility is on me. And I remember that even when, again, I had like 6 users. That's it, 6 users. And the code base is down. The stress of, oh my God, people are paying me. People have paid me money, and now I can't service them because there is a technical problem, and I'm not sure how to fix this technical problem. The responsibility is on me. This is something that I said, I don't want this. It's very difficult to sleep well at night when the responsibility is on you. And what eventually you want to do, if you have a successful company, is delegate this responsibility to people that you trust so that the responsibility is on them. And that's, I think, the key understanding that I had kind of like recently, where is you really need to deal with this problem. Basically, that's what Urush told me or made me realize. You need to deal with this problem of how to delegate responsibility to other people. You failed to do that. Not completely failed. Again, we've got a team, and the team that's in Flux right now are doing a good job. So I'm not a complete failure, let's say, but I told myself that I'm not good at it and I don't want to do it and I don't want more people. But if I'm not going to solve this problem right now, this problem is going to hinder me, or this lack of skill. How do you hire good people? How do you know that they're good people? How do you delegate the work to them? How do you keep them accountable? How do you delegate the responsibility at the end of the day? If you don't solve this problem right now, then you're going to have this problem down the line no matter what you're going to do. And that's going to limit you, right? And the fantasy of you looking at other people who do this, maybe this, like Peter Level's example, one person who's doing everything, sure, but he is, in his example, he is highly technical, and he is okay with taking on the responsibility of, something breaking down with the technology. I do not want to take on this responsibility. And the same thing, by the way, I'm thinking about, like, for example, in Flux, Noah, my wife, is doing all of the legal and admin stuff, which I'm super, super happy that she's doing it. If I had to take responsibility on making sure that the books are correct, that the accountant has everything, that would be a responsibility that I would hate having, right? So at the end of the day, the fantasy of the one person company looks good on paper, but when you think about the actual responsibility and whether you want to own this responsibility, I got to the decision that, yeah, I don't want to own this responsibility of certain things. Some things I'm okay with owning, but some things I will want to delegate, and I want to know how to do that successfully. So now I am back on this track of how to be a good manager after I haven't, again, after I've given up on myself for, I think, like 3-4 years. Now I'm back at it with renewed energy and kind of like the feeling, the sense that this is an important thing that I need to do, and I need to solve this once and for all. Otherwise, it's going to limit me down the line. And I think it's another example of, I read a lot of books. So I know a lot of the information, but knowing the information and acting on it is so different. So I'll give you an example. Like, we had a few interviews where we were interviewing right now for a position in Flux, and Urs, my partner, he came to interview together with me. And some of these people, I only brought him down to the last interview. So I already did the first interview. I already did a test assignment. And some of these interview, candidates, I, in a way, kind of like fell in love with them, where I felt like, oh, this person can be really, really great. And we did the last interview together, and then we got off the call, and then he looked at me and he was like, well, and in a way I knew it wasn't a good fit, but I didn't have the guts to say, no, we're not taking this person, because again, I was looking at the pipeline. I knew we don't have any other candidates. I was afraid of what happens if we don't hire this person. And he helped me hold the line, I guess, of quality or standards, right? I think this, when it comes down to management, it's all about holding the standards, right? Some people call this culture or whatever, but the point is, you as a manager or as a hiring manager or whatever, you get to set the standards of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And if I'm giving up or lowering my standards already in the interviewing process, of course I'm going to lower my standards later on as a manager as well. So him being with me and giving me feedback and guiding me, I find this really, really helpful to hold the quality bar and the standards of what I want. It's still very, very difficult, and it leads to a lot of times, for me personally, it's mostly running away from difficult conversations, because it's either saying no to people, disappointing them, and being disappointed myself, which is a difficult conversation, or if somebody is on the team is not delivering, or even if they're really good, really nice, we're still not getting the results. Having that conversation with them is really, really difficult. So it is about being able to do the difficult conversations. This brings me back to the original like Fiverr story, where I get now the point of where he said, you need to, I think what he meant by asking me how many people I fired is, number one, how many hiring mistakes did you do? Because everybody makes mistakes, and the only way to learn is by doing these mistakes yourself and then learning from them. So if I haven't made mistakes, of course I'm going to do them later on, because nobody's perfect from day one and doesn't make any mistake. So first of all, you need to make the mistakes. And number two, you need to correct these mistakes by saying, okay, I've made the wrong hire here. I need to fix this. And now we need to have the difficult conversation where I tell you that you need to go home or, do something else. So doing the mistakes and then fixing the mistakes is something that basically he asked me, how many rounds of making mistakes and fixing the mistakes you've had? And honestly, back then I didn't have a lot of them. Now I have more, and it's very painful. Like, I remember, because since starting Flux, I had to there were a lot of people that I hired that were not a good fit. I think maybe at this point, maybe like 10, I would say maybe 10, at least 10 people that I had to let go or part ways with. And every time I had to make this conversation, I was stressing out before, maybe like sleeping badly the night before the conversation, kind of having like my heart thumping. And it doesn't matter if I did it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, it's still very stressful, because it's still very painful to come to somebody and tell them, hey, it's not working out. We need to part ways. So this, I don't know, maybe after you do it 100 times, if you have a lot of experience, you don't feel bad, or maybe you feel bad, but you're not stressing out. I don't know. I'm still at that point where it's really difficult for me. And I'm seeing recently, because there were a lot of fires, like a lot of companies firing a lot of people, especially in tech now, with people with AI and downsizing and that kind of stuff. And I see the letters that these CEOs are writing, and sometimes it's like firing hundreds of people, thousands of people, and it's I can't imagine what these people are going through. Of course, I mean, of course, everybody, the people who are let go are obviously affected, but I think that it's very, very difficult as a CEO of a very small company. I know how painful it is to let one or two people go. Then imagining letting go a lot of people at once, a lot of them possibly are good people who have been doing good job. I think that's like very, very, very difficult. I think probably not a lot of people can do this, and this is sometimes people look up to managers and they're like, oh, they're getting a lot of money and they're not working hard as the people. Maybe, but I still think that it's doing something like this, like letting people go, is such a hard job that nobody wants to do. And I don't envy anybody that has to do it. That being said, again, I realize that this is what it takes. And for me right now, I really realize that, okay, if you have good people, good accountable people, and you set high standards, then really it's much easier to run the company. But to get there, it's not easy to get there. It's not easy to have these high standards, because you only get and maintain the high standards by difficult conversations, which again, personally, it's very difficult for me. I'm how do you say, conflict averse. I don't like to get into fights. I don't like hurting other people. I guess I don't like other people thinking that I'm a jerk. I also think that a lot of the mistakes that I did as a manager is because I had maybe bad managers when I was working at companies, and I told myself, when I'm going to be a manager, I'm not going to be like that. And so I think I overcorrected to the point where I am so nice and so not demanding, just to make sure that I am not the asshole boss that I had, or that I never wanted to become. Um, so I think I overcorrected and got to be too nice and too lenient and too non-demanding, and that at the end of the day is also not good. So you need to be somewhere in the middle. There's this, I guess, Radical Candor book. There's a bunch of books on management where they're like, no, you need to be tough but loving. It's very difficult. I think it's very difficult to do that. Again, there is a very, I think, big gap between reading a book with advice and then actually being able to implement it, and doing that. It's, I think, being a manager is maybe like being a designer. It's, you have to practice the craft. It's not just knowing the knowledge. You can't do an online course and immediately become the best designer in the world. You got to do some projects, and the same thing with, I guess, management. You can't be born the best manager in the world. You have to, of course, read and try to learn and get coached and everything, but then you have to make your mistakes. You have to fix these mistakes and grow from them. So that's it. That's the journey that I'm on right now. I'm trying to make Flux a really strong in terms of the people, in terms of the high standards that we have, and hopefully that works well. Not saying there's not going to be more mistakes down the line, but at least I have that as a goal right now. At least I have somebody that's helping me to master that. And the thing that, again, keeps me excited and motivated about this is that I think that this is a skill that no matter what happens, and if I have a different company after Flux or not, I think that this skill of understanding who is a good person that is a good fit, and then convincing them to join, and then working with them, and then making sure that they're happy and making sure that they're delivering. Those are super, super valuable skills for me, and I think for everybody, because at the end of the day, as I said about AI, yes, AI can do a lot of stuff, but you will always need people to be responsible. So you still need to have this human element. And so this is one of the skills that is still, I think, very, very valuable to learn and to have. All right, that's all I got for you today. Hope you have a wonderful week. Today is Thursday, and tomorrow I'm flying to Serbia because next week I'm hosting the FlowConf event in Belgrade, which I'm super excited about. That probably means that next week I'm not going to drop a podcast episode. So I will see you when I am back. Peace out.